Welcome back. It's now time to get started with our Predator build. Well, hey guys, and welcome back to another Interstellar Modeler. It's now time to get started with our Predator POD build from Blackheart Models. I know Ken and I have already done a review with this model, but I'd like to just take a minute to remind you what comes with the kit. So let's take a look. Alright, so we have the parts spread out here. The pod itself consists of 23 pieces, while the figure consists of 10, and the level of detailing is exceptional. This is definitely a premium kit. It runs for $125 on Blackheart Models, but if you are a fan of the movie, this is a unique piece to add to your collection. Again, showing you the level of detail that's included here, and the casting is flawless. You will not be spending your time filling any sort of surface defects here at all. So down to the level of detailing you see on the surface here on the exterior, you can see the workmanship here that's provided. We've got the detailing here on the interior. This of course is the hatch that opens up. And then, as I indicated in the preview video, I'll be building mine in the open configuration. So we've got these side pods that open up, and that's what these are here, just to give you another look at these guys. And then we've got other pieces that will make up the landing gear, and we have a clear windshield that's included. The creature itself, again, just to show you the level of detailing, this is the torso. You can see down to the little mesh that's on his torso that covers the body there. Really exceptional detail. Alright, so I'm going to begin with the pod itself, and the first step, of course, is to prime it. So let me get that done, and then we'll move on. Alright, so here we now have the front and back side of the pod primed. I also have the peripheral pieces primed as well. I was at the hobby store earlier, and I came across this color called green gold, which looked interesting to me. I think it'll help finish off the model. But the first thing I'm going to start off with is a black base coat, followed by a light misting of Vallejo's bronze. Alright, well, I'm really liking what I'm seeing here. After applying the black, I did that light misting of the bronze color, and I didn't want this to look completely solidly bronze, right? So I wanted that black to show through. So I'm getting a nice combination of colors there. And what I'd like to do next, it's going to be almost like applying highlights. Any areas that are coming more towards us or have more relief there, I'm going to be applying this green gold color, which I think will make it look interesting as well. I think it'd be a nice complement to this right here. So let me mix that up and put it in the airbrush, and we'll get started with that. Alright, well, unfortunately this is not coming across on camera as well as I'd like, so let me go ahead and show you the still shot, because it captures how the light's reflecting off the surface as I see it in person here. So my goals here were to create some various shades and some contrast on the surface of this model. So I wanted it to be a little bit darker. I wanted it to have kind of a greenish tinge to it, and that's exactly what I think I've achieved here. You can see the liquid gold has done a nice job using it as the final touch here, with applying it on these areas that come out towards us, and so that's allowed me to provide these nice highlights, and it's a nice complement to the black base and the bronze that we used initially there. So, and of course it has that greenish tinge to it, which is what I was after. I just kind of stumbled across this paint that's called green gold, and yeah, again, in person, I think it's achieved the look that I was after. So, interesting paint to work with. You do have to use alcohol to dilute it, and also to clean your airbrush and your brushes with, so bear that in mind if you're going to use this paint. I think it's a nice alternative. If you want to look into a different type of paint to work with in terms of metallic, you should give this a try. Okay, so before moving on, I'm just going to give this a bit more time to dry, and I think I'm going to apply a gloss coating to protect it, and so I'll do that, and we'll move on here in a second. Alright, well, I've just spent a little time here now painting the interior. The upper section here has all this detail, and I just used all the metallic paints that I had. I had a metallic red, blue, I had a gunmetal, brass, and just tried to paint what I thought looked best here. And so this is all set. Added the steering column and then the footrests. So that's pretty much it for the interior. There's really not a lot of parts there. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night, and I'll pick it up in the morning where we'll start with the landing gear. Alright, just bear with me with the background noise. I do have the garage door open now, but I went ahead and glued this piece onto our leg, and so it has to fit like this. And so we have our pistons now, and again they have to just be faced in the proper orientation so they can slide into proper position. So what's also helpful here is that these squares are sized to only fit into the appropriate slot. We just have to be sure that they're faced in the right direction, and again this is the orientation we need. So let's go ahead and glue those into place. So here's a look at the way the pistons should be facing, and using a little super glue I'll attach them now to the ship. And I'll do the same to the other side. Alright, well you can see now everything is coming along quite nicely. I have the two side pods glued into place. I will leave the main hatch off until the very end. I still have the main windshield there to attach as well. You know what's funny is ever since lighting has become a big part of my model building, it's always a little strange to me when I decide to not light a kit. I always feel like I'm leaving something out, but I'm comfortable with my decision this go around not to do that. I do plan, however, on adding one lighting effect that's going to be in the display. I'm going to see how it works out to put a red breathing LED. I would like to have some sort of a red glowing effect underneath the craft. But I'll talk more about that when I get to the display. In the meantime, what I plan on working on next will be the figure, and that will be in part 2. But let's go ahead and check out and see what Ken is up to right now.
Hello there. So this is the first part of my build for the Predator POD. What I'm focusing on at this point is the modifications that I'm making to the ship in order for the front of it and the two side pieces to be able to open and also be able to have a post for wiring for lighting to put it on the display. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I came up with here. All right, so I'm working on making the front of the ship and the two side earmuffs able to be opened and closed. So I'm putting in a pin mechanism in order to allow that to happen. Now, the only problem is the way that these pieces are angled, like that piece right there on the top, and I trimmed it down a bit. Once the piece is flush up against the ship, like you see right here, this piece right here, I'm going to try to use the part that's attached because it's a pretty good solid piece of resin, and if I can put a pin through that, it'll make it easier than me cutting it off and trying to attach another part. Now the only problem is the way that it's angled, it looks like it's straight here, but I'll show you when I put it in there. Let me show you here. All right, so my first few attempts at the top piece, I started by drilling some holes. You can see that hole on the left side there into the actual resin. And then I tried to open up the front part of the ship and put a pin through there. The only problem was when I tried to put the front back down onto the ship, it wasn't going down all the way. And the reason for that, and the same reason for these on this side, is you can see that when that's down in there, it's in there too far. So it wouldn't line up with that hole that I drilled right there. You can see on the bottom, because it's set back in too far. So what I have to do, and what I ended up doing on the top, first I tried gluing some metal tubing, and I tried some CA glue and some 5-minute epoxy, and it wasn't strong enough, so it kept breaking off. This piece right here. So I had to build up the back of it so when the part's on there, that hole for the pin is far enough back. And so what I did was I took some thick styrene sheet and I cut out a small piece, and I just used a pin vise to drill a hole through it. And I decided, instead of trying to use like a brass tube. I'm just going to use a brass rod instead of having a tube that it goes through. It'll just go right through the styrene. All right, so I glued that in place, and then that allows it to close entirely and then also open up sufficiently. So let me put the front on and I'll show you how that lines up now. All right, so once the front is on and it's flush with the ship, which it has to be, you can see that that piece of white styrene now sticks out further in that rounded part than the other part did. And so then I just had to drill another hole, the one on the bottom, the lower one, that would line up with that piece. And then when I put a pin through it, it's able to open, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. So I'm working on the same idea with the side pieces. So I have to build up the back part of this flat piece, so when it's inside of that groove, it will do the same thing. It'll be out far enough that I can drill a hole that's going to match up with it. So what I did was I took a little teeny piece of styrene. I have a hole drilled through it. And it's the right height. So I just need to glue it on the back of this, and then I can stick this in place and figure out where the holes would be and drill through so it'll line up for a brass rod. All right. All right, so I have the front of the ship and one of the side muffs, air muffs, engine muffs, whatever they're called, I don't know. Put on with some pins, and obviously those rods aren't solid in there yet. They're just stuck in there, and they're too long for the moment. So this isn't fitting quite inside. I did a lot of sanding around it, and it's starting to fit, so I need to work on that some more. But basically that's going to open up like that, and it's not going to open up all the way back because it just doesn't have enough clearance when it's on a pin. And then likewise, this is going to open up. It'll fall over here. Okay, and it's going to come open that wide. So you're going to see a nice full view on the inside of the ship. And it goes back down again. Keep in mind too, the ship's going to be sitting back a little bit angled like this, the way I'm going to have it sitting on the post on the display base. So that's going to come up. I'm working on an idea to be able to hold this open once it's open, because it won't stay that way. There's not enough tension on that pin. Let me set this back and I'll show you. All right, so that opens up to that point, which is pretty good. I could work on some kind of mechanism down there in the top part. Maybe just stick something under it to hold it up while it's opened. It looks like it's part of the machinery, so, okay. All right, so as you saw in the previous stills, I added some extra little bits of styrene on the outside of that center piece to kind of bolster that rod going through even more at the top, mainly because it was simply trying to balance on that center piece, and it was kind of flimsy, and I was just afraid that it was going to put more weight on it and it was potentially going to break it. So it's a little sturdier, still a little bit of a movement in them, but certainly better than it was. So those are pretty much completed. Obviously, these are going to have to be trimmed off when I'm ready to attach them, and I'm going to wait until I paint all the parts before I put these on permanently. So okay, I also had to to put in some magnets in order to hold these two earmuffs together. So let me kind of show you real quick. Open that up. And then I'll take it apart and show you a little closer. So you can see a little magnet right there. There's another one right there on the inside. If I can get a look. Okay, yeah, you can see over there, those two that match up, holding on the earmuff when it's closed. So it goes in and it holds it together. So, okay. Let me take it apart and show you those on the inside as well. All right, so it was tricky to put magnets on the inside of this because you can see how thin this part is that I'm working with, and that's where that side piece comes in and makes contact. So I more or less just grooved it in. Sorry for the lighting. And then the magnet is glued in, and then I put a lot of CA around it and put some accelerator on it to harden it pretty quickly. So it's nice and thick. It's on there pretty good. And the same with over here. This one I've got a little more glue on it. I'm gonna probably have to sand that down a little bit more. But you can see how those two magnets are sticking there. Now on the side pieces, I had a lot more to work with. Initially, you can see down below the magnet, I drilled a hole through thinking that that would be close enough, but it wasn't making contact. So I filled that in with some CA glue, and I put it on top. And then the other side, I just went ahead and put it on top. Just grooved it down in and put it on top. So it matches up better with those two, so, okay. But it does what it needs to do. And then when I paint these, I'll just paint them to match the inside of these. It'll look like just part of the machinery, and you won't really notice it, so. Okay, so I'm done with those parts. I just need to go ahead and work on a mechanism to support this when it's up, and then I'll be done with the moving modifications. So, and then I also have to show you how I'm doing a rod through the ship. I have drilled a hole there, you can see. Well, the bigger one. I started another one, then I moved it a little bit. And that comes out through the bottom, and that can accommodate a brass or an aluminum tube, I'm sorry. So the wiring can come through for the lighting, so, all right. All right, so I experimented with a few pieces to see if I could make some piece to hold that open, the front when it's opened up. So I started with some brass rod and kind of bent it to match, but it was kind of flimsy. Then I took a piece of styrene and just stuck it across it, and it held it a bit, but it was too weak. So I took a piece of square stock. Same thing, it did hold it, but it would eventually bend. So I finally set it on a piece of square tubing, which is nice and rigid. And I bent it into a shape that will go over top of this top lip. So it'll just ride along this lip and then extend out and hold the two pieces up. Let me put it on there and show you. All right, so there you go. Very simple solution. It's nice and solid. I can even set this down and it stays up. And I can put it in and remove it as I want to show it off open. So, all right, so sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. All right, the last modification that I made is I drilled a hole up into the bottom of the seat, up through the back right there, as you can see. And I have inserted an aluminum tube that I can run some wiring through. I'm gonna have some lights inside and some other surprises, which I'll show in a future video here. And it was a bit of a sharper angle, so I bent the tube a bit. It's not permanent, but it's gonna be sort of like this. And I want it to look like it's just landing, suspended up in the air and not actually sitting down on the ground, so you can see all the detail and that kind of thing. So, all right, so that's all the modifications that I'm doing right now on the ship. before I start to paint it. And then once that's done, I can put all the pieces on with the pins. So let me go ahead and put those pieces on and show you what that's going to look like with all these modifications done. All right, so there's all the parts stuck onto it. These held on with the magnets. So I noticed something cool. I can just pull these open if I wanted to, but if I have it taped down, by the way, so it's not going to pull the whole piece up when I pull it open. But if I pull open on this, it automatically pops those open, which is kind of cool. And this opens up. And let me get and put that piece in there, and then I'll show you how that's going to look when it's opened up and extended. All right, there we go. So I have the front extended open so you can see inside and see the palette and the interior. If you wanted to get underneath, you can take a look at the inside too. And I'm still thinking of having this tilted back just a little, so that would be more accessible, but I can display it that way, or I can close it up and display it closed too. Okay, so that is the end of the modifications. Next up, we'll be working on some painting ideas.
Wow, now that is amazing. I really like how he's put magnets on there. I knew he was going to put hinges on the kit. I didn't know anything about the magnets, and just love the effect of when you open the front of the ship, the two side pieces pop open that way. That's great. If you want to see more of Ken's work, by the way, he's got his own YouTube channel, and check it out. You'll be amazed, I'm sure, like I am, at all the little clever devices he comes up with, stuff just like that. He does quite a variety of projects. He loves working on dioramas, and by the way, speaking of dioramas, he talks about all that stuff in the interview that I've done with him. So just check out the interview section of my channel and you'll come across Ken's interview there. So what we've got coming up then is I have the creature to paint and the display to work on. Ken is going to be lighting his model kit as well as painting and detailing the rest of it, so look forward to seeing what he comes up with there. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us here on the YouTube channel by leaving a comment, or contact me at interstellarmodeler@gmail.com. Hope you're enjoying this project that we're working on, and we'll see you then in part 2. Take care.